Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Tony winner Laura Benanti hosts Broadway in Bethesda this Saturday at Roundhouse Theater in Bethesda, Maryland. She joined me to discuss her 5 Tony nominations for Swing, Into the Woods, Gypsy, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and She Loves Me, as well as her recent expansion into hit TV shows and movies. Hey, Laura Benanti. Hey, thank you so much for joining us on WTOP.
Thank you. I'm thrilled.
We're talking because you're coming to Roundhouse Theater in Bethesda, Maryland on Saturday, May 13th for something called Bethesda and Broadway. What do you know about the event? What are you going to be performing? Are you hosting, or what do you know give us a little bit on the event itself?
Yeah, I'm I'm performing. It's a 75 to 90 minute concert of myself and my friend Todd Almond, who's my music director. And it's basically like it's been described in almost every review as like stand-up comedy and music. So I go in between telling like funny and true stories and anecdotes. And then I sing songs from musicals, from that to Joni Mitchell to Tori Amos. So it really spans genres and is like certainly not stuffy. I think sometimes the term like cabaret can feel really like antiquated, like I'm draped over a piano dressed in sequins, and that's not it at all. I want people to feel like they're in my living room, we're telling stories and having a good time.
So you said a little stand-up comedy in there too, or so you've been like writing jokes, or, or is it more casual than that?
Yeah, no, I have, I've been writing jokes for a long time, and I've hosted a lot of things too that I write. So, I certainly don't call myself a stand-up comic, is that is its own very like specific thing that people tour for, and it's, I would never say something like that, just like I wouldn't call myself an opera singer, even though I can sing legit. But it's the stories are like very comedic. And I always say it's like I have a roadmap, but I take side streets. So there's a lot of improv involved as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a really, really cool event. I know in past years, pre-pandemic, they did Audra McDonald in 2019, and then I guess it was off for a couple years, obviously because of COVID. But
Yeah.
then it came back last year with Kelly O'Hara. So you're in good company. I think it's the third time they've done it. Maybe there's a couple I'm missing, but I think it's at least the third time they've done it. But very cool. So, but tell everyone, it is a fundraiser, right? It's not just like a typical show. It's the idea is, the concert tickets might be a little more, but it's the idea it's going to a good cause, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's, a lot of art centers and theaters have struggled since the pandemic. It certainly hit Broadway, but it hit our, more like community local theaters even harder. So I think that, theater in sort of our own areas is really important. Not everybody can get to Broadway, and even if they can, it's very expensive. So the idea is that if you go to an event like this and you are able to, pay a little bit more in order to fund everyone being able to come at a certain point, it's, very much appreciated and super important.
I love it. Well, whenever I have someone on like yourself, a legend, a 5-time Tony nominee like yourself, I always like to hear your superhero, superwoman origin story. So just because listeners love to hear, this inspiring story of how they might be able to follow in your footsteps, kind of a thing. But yeah, I know. So you're born in New York City. Where exactly in New York did you grow up, and how did you get into theater? Like, I want the good, like, I starred in this High School Musical production story.
Yeah, I was born in New York City, and then my parents actually got divorced. I'm fine when I was like a year and a half.
Glad
And
you're
my
fine.
mom,
Glad you
yeah,
made it.
totally
Okay.
fine.
Yeah.
Moved through it. My mom remarried my dad Sal when I was like 4, and we moved out to New Jersey. So I grew up in actually a very small, like rural town in New Jersey. I know most people think of Jersey as highways, but it's actually really beautiful. We had like a farm down the street from our house. And I grew up in
Nice.
this small town where there like wasn't much of an arts program. Like our science teacher directed the High School Musical. And people were, I was the one who was interested in doing musicals. And I sort of would just coerce other people to do it with me. So when I was 16 years old, I played Dolly Levi in Hello Dolly at my high school. And there's this professional equity theater in New Jersey called Paper Mill Playhouse,
Of
where actually
course,
a
very
lot of,
famous.
yeah, a lot of their shows have gone to Broadway, and it's an incredible theater, like Broadway caliber stuff for sure. And they have something called the Rising Star Awards, which is like the Tony Awards for New Jersey high schools. And I won their very first Rising Star Award. And after that happened, they recommended that I audition for Liesel in a Broadway revival of The Sound of Music. So
Yes,
I
that's
auditioned
awesome.
for Liesel, and then at 17 ended up getting cast as the understudy to Maria, which is like the Julie Andrews part. So I did that for a little while, and then when the actress playing Maria left, I took over. And so at like 18, almost 19, I was starring on Broadway, which is very unusual, incredibly unusual. And, I'm so grateful for it. But I will say, like, being in my local community theaters and in my high school shows, that helped foster the love I had for theater and also gave me direction and purpose and focus. There's so many studies that show that young people who are exposed to the arts, they do so much better in every way, social, emotional, academically. Um, and so yeah, that's my origin story. And then, I thought I'd maybe go back to school because I had intended on going to NYU, but then I got this, big job. And then every time I would decide to go back to school, I would get another show. So I've been incredibly lucky. Since 1997, I've starred in over 11 Broadway shows and done tons of TV and film and concerts and albums. So, and a lot of that is luck. I definitely am, I work really hard. I'm prepared. And also, and this is what I want young people to understand, some of it is just luck. I mean, I have heard people singing in the subway who are as talented as anyone on Broadway or any, person you hear on the radio. Which is why I'm such a big supporter of, our local arts organizations. I think it's really important.
Oh yeah, luck and timing is so
Yeah,
much of it. But you have but like you tell everybody, what is it when opportunity meets preparation, that's when you get success. Like you need to be prepared.
exactly. Oh,
You need to have had your 10,000 hours or whatever it is starring in the high school shows, which there's a direct line to Paper Mill to Sound
yeah,
of Music to Broadway for you. It worked out that way. But you
yeah.
got to be prepared. You got to put in the time so when the opportunity, if the luck and the timing does come. um
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so that like singular focus I had as a young person, really, and frankly, just like the mental concentration
right.
and that it took was, was a really important part of getting to where I am now, which is, I get to make a living as an artist, which is all I ever wanted.
Oh, living the dream. Keep it going.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I would love it, and we can maybe go through them a little rapid fire because I don't want to keep you all day, but like I would love to go
No.
into the five Tony nominations really quick. So I know the first one was for Swing, Memories of Swing, really quick. That first Tony nod.
Well, I was 19 years old. I was the youngest like adult ever nominated for a Tony Award. So that was pretty cool. Like children had been, but not in terms of like grown-ups. That was pretty crazy. I actually thought it was a joke. My mom called me. This was like before cell phones, before, the internet was big. My mom called me and she was like, "You were nominated for a Tony Award at like 8 in the morning." And I was like, I think you're wrong. It must have been the show. And I hung up and not on her. I said goodbye. And then I started getting more and more calls and I was like, "Oh my God, I actually did." I had I just couldn't believe it.
That's awesome. Well, but memories of the actual role too, not just the Tony too.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
you know
yeah.
what? The show was, it was like a jukebox musical of swing music with professional swing dancers who were like champions all over the world. And so there wasn't much dialogue at all. It was interpreting songs. And I had this really amazing number with a trombone player. We did Cry Me a River. And it was basically like a duet between the two of us. And he was able to make his trombone sound like a human being talking. It was really insane. He's such an incredible trombone player and a really great guy.
And this is the Arthur Hamilton Crimea River, not the Justin Timberlake.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Awesome.
Good job with the Arthur Hamilton poll. I'm very impressed with
Oh
you.
yeah, the Google is crazy. I'm so talented. All right. And then the second one was Into the Woods, of course, playing Cinderella. Memories of not getting to do Sondheim. Obviously, he's since recently passed, but it must have been
Yes.
a joy. I'm sure you got to meet Sondheim at some point in that, right?
Oh yeah, I was very I've been really blessed that I got to work with him on Into the Woods and a little night music at the LA Opera and Gypsy on Broadway. But fun fact, I actually played Cinderella 6 years earlier at the Barn Theater in New Jersey, which is this amazing community theater.
Ah.
So that prepared me to audition for Stephen Sondheim.
Oh wow! So you actually got to play the same role and play it again. So I guess it was old hat at that point, or
Well,
old
I it
glass
certain
slipper.
yeah, exactly. It certainly prepared me for sure. I had a leg up in that area.
Awesome. And then moving right along, obviously we won't hit all of them because you did Nine and A Little Night Music and Pippin and Secret Garden and Wedding Singer, a bunch of good stuff. But let's get to the one you mentioned, Gypsy, because that's the third Tony nomination. What was it like getting to do a second Stephen Sondheim role? I mean, Gypsy's one of the all timer parts.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the greatest shows of all time. And I actually won the Tony for that one, which was pretty exciting. And I got to play opposite Patty, the great Patty LuPone and the remarkable actor Boyd Gaines. So that I would say is probably the highlight of my career thus far.
What was it like sitting
Um,
in there as they called your name on Tony night? Could you believe it actually had happened?
it's funny because I had won all the awards up to that, Drama Desk and Outer Critics Circle, and everybody was saying you're going to win, and the New York Times was saying I was going to win, but I still didn't allow myself to believe it because expectation is our biggest path to disappointment. And so when they called my name, I was just, I've never run up to a stage faster in my entire life. And my friend Kristen Chenoweth was the one who presented it to me, which meant the world to me. And, to look out in the audience to see Arthur Lawrence, who wrote Gypsy and directed our production, to see him standing at 92 years old was just, I'll never forget that moment. I
Oh,
feel like that's one of the moments that'll like flash before me as I'm like piecing out.
well, don't peace out for a while, but yeah. So
No,
image is right up in the forefront for sure. That's like a lifetime memory right there.
exactly.
And then really quick, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown, and you'd already won a Tony, but here comes nominated again after that. Had you seen the Pedro Almodovar film before that,
Yes,
or
of course, of course. I'm a big Pedro Almodovar fan, and
genius?
I just love that show so much.
Anything else about any other memories of playing? What is it, Candela? How do you say it?
Candela,
Candela.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I had one of the greatest songs of all time that David Yazbek wrote. It was like a 7-minute song and absolutely hilarious. And I got to work with Patty LuPone again, which is, anytime I get to work with Patty is a wonderful time.
Absolutely. All right, and then just to round it out, then the I don't want to say fifth and final because there's many more to come, but the
I hope
fifth
so.
so far, She Loves Me. Who wrote that? Was it Jerry Bach?
Yes, and Sheldon Harnick.
Right, right, okay.
Exactly. My memory of that is I was pregnant with my daughter Ella. And it was like that early days where you kind of don't tell anybody, which, I could get into for a long time in terms of the misogyny of that. But, I had hyperemesis, which is basically you have morning sickness all day long, the entire pregnancy. And they had to like hide garbage cans all over the set for me. Um, but there's an incredible movie of it that they made for Broadway HD that you can get through Amazon. And they did such a beautiful job. But if you watch that movie, you can watch me vomit in my own mouth and swallow it.
You can actually see it in HD,
Oh
close up
yeah,
camera.
totally. It was originally live. They streamed it live, and my husband texted me, "Did I just watch you swallow your own vomit?" I was like, "You sure did." And
Come
that is a
on, that give
pro.
her all the awards for that alone. But wait, what wasn't
Exactly.
it? Wasn't the story? If our listeners maybe missed that on Broadway, wasn't the story sort of like the old Ernst Lubitsch movie that I love, Shop Around the Corner, or the remake with Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, the You've Got
Ex-
Mail? It's a similar take on
Exactly.
that, right?
Yes, it's all based on Shop Around the Corner. There's Shop Around the Corner, She Loves Me, and then You've Got Mail. And I think now we're sort of living in a time where people are on social media all the time. It, the She Loves Me takes place in 1930s Budapest, and people
Right.
are ready. They write letters to each other, and they call each other dear friend through like a Lonely Hearts Club, which was like the Match.com of the 1930s. So in a weird way, the show was more like pertinent than ever at that time. Um, so yeah, it was such a wonderful experience.
Right, right. Back then it was Mr. Matacek, and
Yes,
and well, in the
exactly.
movie it was The Wizard of Oz, Frank Morgan playing it with Jimmy Stewart,
Yes,
Margaret Sullivan. But
yes. Oh my gosh.
if anyone hasn't seen that, it's so great. And then of course, yeah, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, of course. But then your version on Broadway, all good stuff.
I gotta tell you, I am so impressed with you and your knowledge of so many things. I'm really like, my hat's off to you.
You just got to do it. You got to, it's part of the gig, or else I wouldn't be the one getting to do these interviews. You got to bring it every time you talk to a Tony winner. You got to bring it.
Well, you're killing it. You are killing
Awesome.
it.
Well, you've been killing it the whole time, and I'm sure you'll kill it again at Roundhouse Theater. It's going to be Broadway in Bethesda Gala on May 13th. So everyone come out and raise money for a great theater. They always do great shows. Final seconds, talk if you have a second. I want to hear about getting to transition into TV and movies. Like we've seen you in Tick Tick Boom. We've seen you in the new Gossip Girl and Gilded Age and Life and Beth. Is that the latest, I guess, with Amy Schumer on Hulu? Just what's it been like getting to pivot and show your art and your talent on a small screen? Because like you're saying, they can capture the vomit in the mouth. But it's a little different being in close up versus this wide proscenium stage, right?
It is. That's exactly right. There's a different energy to on camera acting. When you are on stage, you have to sort of fill an entire theater. So the energy is sort of going outward. But with what I have learned with TV and film is you're really drawing the audience in. And the camera is like a lie detector. It can tell if you are not completely dropped into or understanding or believing what you're saying and feeling.
Right.
Um, obviously you need that on stage as well, but the audience is a little bit further away. So you can sort of get away with things a little bit more. But, you know, it took me a while. I look back, like my first television show ever was for FX. It was called Starved. And I look back and I see the promise there. I see some really good moments there, but I also see where I needed to, work on that particular skill, like you said, like the 10,000 hours. And now I've, done so many TV shows, in Nashville and um, Nurse Jackie and, like you mentioned, Leif and Beth and Gilded Age and Younger and Law and Order. I've gotten to do so many great shows. And now I'm doing like more films, which is really fun. I'm in that Jennifer Lawrence film that's coming out this summer, playing opposite Matthew Broderick, No Hard Feelings, it's called. I did like a psychological thriller called The Shade, which will hopefully be appearing in some festivals. And so it has been a really interesting um, sort of segue into an art form that is similar to theater, but different enough that it is like completely learning something new. And to get to stretch that part of my brain, alongside doing these concerts, which is, a combination of sort of being yourself, which is why I sort of mention it as like stand up comedy, because that's just the easiest genre to compare it to. And then when you stop talking to inhabit the character of the song. So I feel really lucky that I get to do all of these things and to, continue to work on them. I always want to be learning and growing until, the very last day.
Yeah, when it flashes before your eyes, like you so morbidly
Exactly. When
said
I peace
earlier.
out. When I peace
No,
out, man.
lot of time, lot more great projects to come. I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, and everyone, check out Laura Benanti at Bethesda and Broadway. It's the gala at Roundhouse Theater to raise money for the local theater in Bethesda. They do great work, so it's definitely worth your time investment. It's Saturday, May 13th. So, hey, thanks so much for joining us. We covered a lot
Thank
of ground in a little
you.
time. Thanks so
We
much.
really did. Thank you.
All right, bye.
All right. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Our theme music is Scott Buckley's Clarion. Remember to give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.